I have it 6A and 6B lifting.
The weightlifting, well, maybe Mr. Rutherford would let you come down. Eddie would.
He probably would. He's pretty cool guy.
If you need to send kids 6A, I've just been in that little room that me and Heather share, working with my girls over there. Dana's today too.
Sweet. I study hall right after his class. I have 7th grade study hall.
Alright, today we're going to take a look at midpoints, okay? Finding a point that's right in between two other points. So before I actually give you the formula, let's look at the first example and see if we can figure out what the formula should be.
Is it -1?
The answer here is -1, okay? If we're looking for the midpoint, the point exactly in between P and Q, -1. How did we get that? Look in the middle. All right. What if I gave you two numbers without a number line? What if I said A is at 6 and B is at 1? No, other direction.
3.5.
It would be 3.5. How did we get that?
I tried to calculate it.
How did you try to calculate it?
Add together, divide by 2.
Bingo. When we're finding a midpoint, what we're doing is finding the average of two numbers. Okay? A midpoint is just the number that's in between, and to get something that's directly in between, we take an average. So to do that, that's the formula. Right? We add those two things together and just divide by 2. So if I'm calling those two numbers x1 and x2, I just take x1 plus x2 and divide by 2. Okay? That's the formula if I'm just looking on a number line. Okay? If I'm just looking on a number line, I'm going to take my two endpoints, add them together, and divide by 2. Right? So here, in this example, we were able to see that -1 was the midpoint just by looking at this. But if I wanted to do this mathematically, I could say, well, my endpoints are -3 and 1. So I'm going to take -3 plus 1 and divide by 2. Well, -3 plus 1 is -2. And -2 divided by 2 is -1. Okay. Questions? All right, let's jump down to the exercises and try these one-dimensional examples then. Okay, so using this number line, right, where we've got a bunch of points on there, we're just trying to find the midpoint. Okay, so if I'm looking at C and E, right, -4 and 2, well, I'm just going to take -4 plus 2 and divide by 2.
-1.
So we end up getting -1 again. Right? -4 plus 2 is -2. -2 divided by 2 is -1. Okay, so give these ones a try here. Find the midpoint on this number line, okay, between each set of points here. For which one? 7. Should be 3.5, -3.5, yep.
Great.
I've been schooling. 7 days. No wait for it. They're like 6 days. You want. Get back. You want. Where what? Who what? How what? When I what? What I want.
There.
I'm not gonna let this midget over here. That's what you do.
How we doing, guys?
Oh, touched her recording.
So are you recording? Because you're gonna click the time.
She turned it. Recording.
Yeah, you're the one that took a good custom.
I did not give you proof.
And then you get a lot of stuff. I know. That's what I'm saying.
Look at y'all doing homework. And like, staring at it, like, God. Wrong with people. I could do your homework all the time. Why not? Maybe you want some ridiculous.
Technical surprise.
But you will go for the camera. Watching the video out of nowhere, like, that's good. I can do my paper through.
No, you stop saying that. Pissing me off.
Yeah, why
You need to tell me to watch it. Because Dad's heard about every customer there is now.
No.
Yeah, that has heard every customer.
Alright. Did we get these answers here? Okay, you might not be done with all of them, that's okay. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, you got it wrong.
I didn't even write it down. I said you were talking.
You got it wrong.
Just one half? So, let's see, what are our endpoints? So B and G. So we've got B is at -7, right? And G is at 8. So if I do -7 plus 8 divided by 2, -7 plus 8 would be +1. Right? Any other questions on these ones here? Guys, come back here. Any other questions on finding our midpoints here? Alright, then let's take a look at doing this in 2 dimensions. Okay? If I'm given 2 coordinate points now, okay, so we want to do this on a coordinate plane instead of just on a number line. I'm just going to do the exact same thing twice. I'm going to first take the average of the x coordinates, so add the x coordinates together and divide by 2. And then separately, take the y coordinates, add those together, and divide by 2. Okay, so I'm just going to do the same thing we just did twice. I'm going to do it for the x coordinates, and then for the y coordinates. So if we look at this example down here, okay, I'm given 2 coordinate points, -2, 4, and 4, 1. So what I'm going to do is take the average of the x coordinates. So I'm going to add -2 and 4 together and divide by 2. So -2 plus 4 divided by 2. And then I'm going to take my y coordinates, 4 and 1. And then I'm going to take my y coordinates, add them together, and divide by 2. -2 plus 4 gets me 2. 4 plus 1 gets me 5. Now 2 divided by 2 is 1. And 5 divided by 2 is 2.5. Okay? So we could write 2.5, or we could just leave it as 5 halves. So my midpoint here is the point 1, 5 halves. So all we're doing is taking the average of the x's, meaning I add them together and divide by 2, and then taking the average of the y's, meaning I add them together and divide by 2. Questions on that? All right, then let's jump down and try a few of those. Okay, at the bottom, okay, there are 6 problems here. Okay. Alright. Did we get these answers here? Take that as a no.
I got no answers.
Nothing after that.
Yep.
I got all of them.
Good.
How did you get? What? How did you get 4 for the house? Did you get 1.5?
For number 14? So for the y coordinates, we're adding 2 and 6 together, right? I'll do the whole thing. So -11 plus -19 over 2, and then 2 plus 6 over 2. So -11 plus -19 would get me -30, and 2 and 6 would get me 8. So -30 divided by 2 is -15. 8 divided by 2 is 4.
I don't know how I'm going to find because I have all that with right here.
Well, the y coordinate for 12 is 4.5. Maybe you just looked up there and wrote that down again.
Some of them are putting it in their calculators like all at one time, and order of operations is messing it up. Like instead of, you know what I'm saying?
You gotta do parentheses.
I feel like that happens a few times.
All right. So are some of you doing this in your calculator?
I didn't do that.
Okay.
I did that once, but then I realized.
So you can put this whole thing into your calculator at once if you use parentheses. So if you put parentheses around -11 plus -19 to show that all of that is being divided by 2, that should give you the right answer in your calculator. Okay, if you're wanting to use a calculator for that. Any other questions on this? Alright. Then let's flip over. Okay, and we're going to take a look at one more idea on the back. Alright, the final idea that we're going to look at on the back today, okay, is instead of finding a point that's exactly halfway in between, or a midpoint, we're going to find a point that's a different fraction, okay, maybe a third or a fourth of the way between 2 points. Okay, the only thing we're going to do today with that is on a number line, okay, in one dimension. We'll do the two-dimensional part of this tomorrow, okay, but in one dimension, okay, if I want to find a point, so in this example, I want to find some point x that is 1/3 of the distance from A to B. Well, the first thing I need to do is find the total distance from A to B. So if A is at -4 and B is at 5, what's the total distance between those 2 points? 9. Yeah. We did this yesterday, right? The distance between 2 points on a number line. Just count the spaces, right? So that total distance is 9. Right? The distance between A and B is 9. Well, now, if I want to find a point that is 1/3 of that distance, I'm going to take that total distance and multiply it by 1/3. Okay? So what is 1/3 of 9? 3, right? And if you don't know that, you can do it in the calculator, right? 1/3 times 9. So 1/3 times 9 is equal to 3. So that's not my answer, okay? The point isn't at 3. 3 is the distance I need to travel from where I started. So x is 3 units from point A. So I'm starting at where A is at -4, and I'm going to go a distance of 3. Right? So I'm going to start at -4 and go 1, 2, 3, and find that my final point x is at -1. Okay? So instead of, or it's different than a midpoint, right? We want to find the total distance, multiply that total distance by whatever fraction we're looking for, and then take that number and add that on to wherever we're starting. Okay? Questions on that? Okay, let's jump down and try one real quick. Okay, at the bottom, number 1, under the exercises, right? Okay, so we've got 2 points, S and T. So first, we want to find the total distance between S and T. Then multiply that distance by the fraction in question. In this case, that's 1/5. And then take whatever number we got and move that distance from our starting point, from S. Okay, so take 2 minutes, try this one here. Time flies. All right, for this one, hopefully we got the total distance is 10, right? The distance between S and T is 10. But I want 1/5 of that distance. So I'm going to take 1/5 of 10. Okay, 1/5 of 10 is 2. Okay, we would just multiply 1/5 times 10. So then, that tells me, that's not my answer, right? The point isn't at 2. That tells me the distance to go from where I started. So I started at -7. I go a distance of 2, and I get to -5. So point X should be at -5. -5. Forgot my negative sign there. Okay. Questions? All right. I want you to try a couple of these for homework. Alright, page 31 to 32, 12.
It's like this year when he was paying Jed for it. I'm gonna stay with that
I got practice.
I was like, you get $120 other things that I cannot go to.
Alright, here is your homework. Not yet. I will put it online.
So many other things that I can't want to. But no, we have this.